Continue.
Okay, so what the SBDC and myself have been doing for the past 3 weeks is really monitoring, navigating, finding resources for all the small businesses. For those of you who really don't know our structure, we are a program that has 3 main stakeholders. One is the SBA, the other is the state DECD, and the other is UConn. So all of our efforts really have been shifted to under the SBA and helping really guide people through these relief funds that are available, loans and grants, and some forgivable depending on how it's used. So I work very closely with my director, who gets direct information from SBA. They get direct information from Washington. So we're trying to disseminate the most accurate information, not always accurate, or sometimes we have to go back and say, okay, that's not how it's happening, because we're all working, we're all learning this as it comes out. There is no structure, there is no system. It's all being put together as we go. So, and I have a place at Workspace. I have a little cubicle housed at Workspace.
A dedicated desk.
I have a dedicated desk. My apologies. So I'm usually there, but now I'm at home in the comfort of my living room.
Excellent. So as you can see at the bottom of the first slide, it says this was created on March 26th. It has since been updated because things have changed. And at the end, there'll be a slide with all these resources where you can stay up to date, including the Town of Manchester updates, Connecticut SBDC updates. There's other resources. And one of the things that might happen, or might have already happened, is that you're overwhelmed by the number of resources. So in an early conversation with Shelley, she suggested that people pick 1 or 2 resources to be their go-to, because a lot of it is redundant anyways, and that way you can prevent getting too overwhelmed. And we just had a conversation before this call that this PowerPoint's called Recovery Resources, and she pointed out that there's a difference between relief and recovery, and we're still in the relief phase. So hopefully at the end, by the end of this, people will know how they can get, if not immediate relief for their businesses and as individuals pretty soon, as soon as possible with what's going on.
Let me point out, you can stay here though, Stacy. When you find your resources, just make sure that they are tapped into the SBA. Sometimes people get second and third hand information, and once you get that information, if it does need to be retracted or it changes on a dime, it's really hard to unravel that. So just be sure that it has SBA somewhere inside, whether they're a partner or a lender.
Great. So different things that have been put in place so far is the CARES Act, which supports individuals and businesses. There's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and Paycheck Protection Program loans that are available. The state of Connecticut is taking action, and then at the end we can tell you a little bit about the local outreach. Gary Anderson, the head of planning and economic development for the town, is on the call with us, and there's just a lot of people working behind the scenes to make it as simple as possible for entrepreneurs and businesses and nonprofits and individuals to come out of this as healthfully as possible. All right, am I eligible for economic relief? How do people figure that out, Shelley?
Well, so everybody who owns a business, as a sole proprietor, small business, 1099, independent contractor, is eligible for these relief funds and loans. So there's really no industry specific. It's not targeted at one level of business. It's just a matter of finding out where you fit into that and what is best for you.
And how do they do that?
There, so you can go to the SBA website. You can go to our website, which is CTSBDC. Those will have all of the information on the CARES Act, on the different loans. It'll have eligibility, and eligibility is really kind of broad here. They have really opened it up because even if you are a startup, you are eligible. You know, independent contractors, because what they're looking at is really the whole picture and the trickle down. So it's not just that there's no revenues for the business. There's also the vendors. There's also the independent contractors. There's also, it just keeps going. So in a scenario like this, just assume you're eligible until they tell you you're not.
Excellent. And what's the starting point for people to apply?
So a starting point would be in touch with the resource that can help kind of guide you. There are things that we have learned along the way that help prepare the businesses or the persons to apply. If nothing else, it gives them a peace of mind that they've spoken with someone, they've had their questions answered. So, you know, coming to me, you can go to TANA, you can go to any of the other resources, but you know, as well, we're all in this together, and we have the links that we can share with you, which will, I believe, will be at the end of this slide as well.
Excellent. Tana, do you want to say hello? I know
Hello.
you don't, but will you? And Tana, your role with the town of Manchester is?
I'm the Downtown Economic Development Specialist, so I work pretty much exclusively in the area of the downtown with the business community and the property owners within the downtown.
Great.
And what Gary and I have spoken about as my role, a little bit of a shift in my role during this COVID crisis, is to really look to business retention and connecting the businesses to resources that will help them sustain throughout this. And then, of course, the getting back to growth after it is going to be another concern also. And I think Kyle might be working in that area as well on a broader basis.
Great. So if somebody does have a question about surviving this and they're not physically located downtown, who do they reach out to first?
I would certainly try to be helpful, but I believe Kyle is the resource for the non-downtown, but Kyle will have to speak for himself. I think he's
Kyle, you there?
Well, if Kyle's not here, I'll speak to that. So
Okay.
this is Gary Anderson, the Director of Planning and Economic Development. And yes, my office is you know, obviously our role is fluid as well here, but we're, you know, we can provide assistance for folks as well. Kyle Shield is the Senior Planner. Our phone number is 860-647-3044. 860-647-3044. So if anybody needs immediate assistance, they can call that number, and one of us will be available to provide resources. The other resource that I would mention is certainly the Manchester Area Chamber of Commerce, who's been very active here. And I'm not sure if they're on the call today or not.
Emma
but,
Peterson is on the call.
Hi, Emma. How are you? So contacting the chamber, if you're a chamber member, certainly I would recommend as well. Shelley outlined the assistance that SBA and the SBDC provide, and really they're the ones that are closest to the information that's coming out. But between all of us, if you contact one of those entities at this point, you'll get assistance from one of us.
Great. And while we're filing things online and everything, what is the type of paperwork, data, metrics that the government is going to need to see about our losses so that we can get some of it back?
In regards to the loans, is that what you're talking about? So
in regards to everything, if I haven't started the process yet, what should I be tracking though, in terms of when I go to log on for the process? How do I prove my loss of revenue or income? Or
a lot of what they are looking at will be your tax returns. So part of, so we'll start with the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which is acronym EIDL. So the idle
That,
loan.
there we go. Slide. Okay.
Yes. So what happens here is it's a very streamlined process out of the gate, and it's a two-step process, and maybe even more once you get in and have someone you connect with. But they're looking for your revenues, your cost of goods, and some other specific numbers. And all this can be found, and they tell you this, where you can look on your tax returns to find it. Even if you're a sole proprietor and it's under your social security number, it's all there. That's kind of what they're looking at. If you haven't filed 2019, I'm assuming they're going to look at 2018. If you haven't filed 2018, I would talk to your accountant and get them filed. That's, you want to be up on that. The 2019 is still fluid because they did give an extension. But, part of that, so once they're in and they've submitted, the information that they're going to request is going to be different for every business.
Okay.
There is no set, get XYZ ready for this particular loan. Because it might be as simple, and they might say, I don't need anything else. What you gave me is complete. Here you go. Other ones will have to provide a lot more. And in part of this, when we're looking at the idle loan, small businesses that are looking for an X amount, they're not going to be asked how much. The SBA will tell them how much will be given. And it's all based on not necessarily losses, but liabilities. So the whole idea for this idle loan is really to make sure that this business can pay its bills, can pay its rent, utilities, debts, anything that is going to be over the next 4 months, so that they can continue business once they start to ramp up. It's not about revenue losses. Now, the revenue losses come in a different fashion once they get into speaking with someone, as far as I lost contracts. And it's the trickle down again, right? It's the whole trickle down. So it is absolutely, I suggest everybody apply for this idle loan. One, it's 30 years at 3.75. You can't find that anywhere else. Two, when you are approved, if you don't want the loan, you can reject it. So you don't have to take it. But if you don't apply now, you are going to be really far deep into the queue, because only half of America has hopped on this as of now. I'm sure they're still sweeping in, because there's still parts of the US that haven't felt the impact as some have already. And then three, you have to apply for this idle loan in order to be considered for the up to $10,000 advance, which is then turned into a grant. And what that means is they will deem, based upon employees, how much, so forth and so on. I don't know the formula. They didn't share it with us, but you will be given an advance up to $10,000. Now, $10,000, and the advance does not have to be paid back. What is inside of that is really the immediate part that was said. It's immediate once the application is complete. Now there's the distinction. The first time that you hit submit, it's not complete. You haven't spoken with anybody yet. SBA hasn't given you, I need X, Y, and Z. Or they haven't said, okay, we're sending it in for consideration. It is now complete. Once they give that complete sign, it's from there that the 3 to 5 days you will get that advance. So it's not 3 to 5 days from when you put in the first application. So there's a little bit of a timeline, I think, crossover, and people just don't didn't understand, and we didn't understand that timeline either. So that's the EIDL loan.
And
So
just
part
to
of
clarify, because it came up in a previous conversation we had, you apply for the loan, for some reason you're denied the loan, you're still now eligible for the grant advance.
Correct.
So you do, so even if you think you don't meet the qualifications of the loan itself, you do want to apply.
Correct.
Could I ask a couple of questions on that?
Absolutely. Who is this?
Tim Becker.
Hey, Tim.
Hey. First of all, what I read about it is the rate is 2.75. Is that not correct?
3.75.
3.75. Okay. And once you apply the, I also saw at least a caveat that the advance has been reduced to $1,000 per employee, up to 10,000.
So let's retract that, because that was something that was put out there. And Gary, it was put out there. And that's what we had an understanding of this morning. But we have been asked to retract that from the SBA and not put an amount on there. So it's not, SBA is saying it's not just 1,000 per employee, it's up to 10,000. I don't know why it was out there and then they brought it back. So I don't know why, but that is where that's going.
And I applied online, then I mailed in the documents with my signature on them. Is there any time frame? I guess the next step is the SBA will contact me as an applicant. Is that the next step?
Correct. So there's kind of three parts to this EIDL loan, because when it first came out, there was a whole slew of paperwork they were looking for. The system crashed. They got it back up. Some people had completed the application. Some were in the midst of it. And then I don't want to say they wiped everything, but from March 30th, if you applied anywhere prior to March 30th, I would highly recommend you reapply, because somewhere along the way it's floating. Maybe they have it, but I would reapply. And if you've reapplied under the new after 3/30, then you're in the queue for the right application.
Is there a way to check on where you are and if your application's been received? No.
So no, they do have a phone number and they do have an email address. However, neither one give any information on application status. I have tested it myself and I have asked the question every single day since the 30th, because there is no way at this given point in time that I have seen or any of my clients have experienced a way to find out the status of your loan. So having said that, I can only imagine it's just they're going through the queue. And if you're number 10,000 or if you're number 500,000, but we have no way to know. I'm trying to figure out and decipher a way that we can know. And when we do, we will absolutely get that out to people. But at this time, we don't.
So they
sit and wait.
They won't even acknowledge that they've received it and it's being processed.
So at the end of the application, you should have had a screenshot of your application number.
Yes.
That is your acknowledgement.
Okay.
Okay.
If you got
when
that,
they want more information,
you need to do it again.
I'm sorry?
If you got that acknowledgement before March 30th, are you suggesting they reapply again, or that means it made it into the system?
They're in the system. That page was not there prior to the 30th.
Okay. All right.
Shelley,
Okay.
could I ask, is it appropriate to send out a notification to businesses and basically telling them if they applied prior to March 30th because of I don't know, whatever the proper computer term is, that they should complete a new application and submit it?
You can. My guess is that there weren't too many that made it through unless they mailed it in, because most of them were in a holding pattern. If they started on day one, they had like a laundry list of documents they had to upload when they were having issues. But yes, I would absolutely say I've sent out an email to my clients and anybody who has been added to that. You can, yes, Tana, to answer your question.
Okay, so they should reapply for both the EIDL loan and the grant.
That is all in the same app.
It is, yes, but
Yes.
both of them. All right,
Yes.
thank you.
All right, let's quickly review the CARES Act itself. Is there anything we need to say about this that you think people don't know?
No, just, read it, because there might be something inside of that pertains to you.
Okay.
A lot of this, right, is for those who are either unemployment, the benefits in regards to that, if you get the virus, those kinds of things. So you want to be aware of what is available to you, barring reading the, I don't know how many pages it is, 42 pages. You can kind of look through and just get familiar with it or have it.
The one thing I would add to that, I'm sorry, Tim. The one thing I would just add to that is an enormous bill. I mean, it's a $2 trillion bill. So what we're talking about here is a very small piece of that, even if you include the individual payments, individual unemployment insurance, things like that. There's a lot of other things in this bill that we're really not discussing. So I just want to make that comment that this call isn't to necessarily go over all the CARES Act. This is for small business assistance primarily.
Yeah.
Can I just, while you're on the screen, ask a question?
Yeah.
It's my understanding that self-employed individuals are eligible to apply for unemployment compensation. And I was in touch for several days with John Larson's office. The state website where you apply specifically says self-employed people need not apply. And the CARE Act says otherwise. Apparently the state was waiting for guidelines from the feds as to how they should follow creating unemployment for self-employed individuals. That has come out, but as far as I know, the state does not have any provision on their website for unemployed individuals to apply. Is that anything you've been informed about?
Tim, I did get something from DOL that I can forward to you that has several links in regards to individual and families and all of that information. So I can get that to you and anybody else on the call as well. It's as of April 6th. We just got it yesterday, late yesterday. So, I know that you can apply for unemployment, but you're also eligible for the PPP program, which we're going to get into a little bit later.
Thanks.
Stacy, you're muted. Stacy, you're muted.
Thank you. I had a interruption. Yeah, so any of these resources that come up here will also be, if not now, soon on the Manchester resource page as well, because we're calling all of our information. Let's see, someone asked, I was told 1099 income won't count towards the income used to calculate the benefit. Is that a question you can speak to, Shelley? 1099 income won't count towards the income used to calculate the benefit.
The benefit for the PPP program?
I don't know. Jolynn, do you want to open your microphone?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is for the unemployment, how much of the unemployment payment you will receive. They told me you can't count your 1099 income to qualify yourself to be able to get unemployment.
That I don't know that. They might have something on the list that I've gotten it from DOL that might help with that. So 1099s and self-employed and sole proprietors, it's kind of that murky area. I know that they are looking at that because 1099s are the trickle down. So, but you are eligible for the PPP loan, and that could be some reason why they're waiting. So that opens up for 1099s and self-employed and independent contractors tomorrow.
And is there an answer to the question, when will I get the money?
I'm sure there is, we just don't know it yet.
Okay.
We are tracking several of our obviously of the lot of clients that we have, just to see if we can't put together some type of timeline, and we haven't had anybody come through the EIDL loan yet. We have had a couple come through the PPP, and mind you, that is bank driven. So every bank's going to have a different timeline. So it's one of those that, you know, again, the bank is going to give you your timeline, and you have someone to check in with, which is why they disseminated it down to local banks.
Does anybody have any additional questions about the Paycheck Protection Program loans?
I think we should just make a couple points about that if we could.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
Absolutely.
one of the main things here is that as opposed to the EIDL loans that Shelley was talking about previously, this is the program that comes directly from the CARES Act, excuse me. And these go through the lending institutions. So each lending institution that's participating has different rules. They're at different stages. Some have not even rolled it out yet. Some have reached their preliminary cap. Some have, you know, a hotline where people are encouraging loans from new customers. Some are saying that, no, we're only going to, or we're going to prioritize customers that have existing mortgages with us. So it really depends on your institution. The information that I've received and the guidance that I've received is you really need to call your banking institution or your financial institution and ask them about their rules specifically. And of course, that brings up the point that, you know, people may not be getting calls back or may not be getting responses. But that's really the place to start for this, which is a different loan package altogether. Shelley, I don't know if you have other things about this loan in particular that you want to reiterate here.
Sure, I do. Because it's really important to understand this particular loan package. This particular loan package is obviously separate from the first one. These are funds that have been filtered down through the SBA certified lenders. It is mainly for three things: payroll, rent, and mortgage interest if you have a building, interest only, not the mortgage, and utilities. So this particular loan, at the end of your 8 weeks, has a potential to be forgivable. There are certain criteria to that, which is in the CARES Act. And so as you see all of these, it's also the principle for this particular, it is a loan. It is at 1% until you fulfill, I think it's 6 months, and then you can request it to be forgivable at the end of the 6 months. So backing up a little bit, this will give you 8 weeks of payroll. If you have, so as of February 15th, you had a full payroll staff. They're going to look at that number. How much do you need for payroll? They're going to times that by 2.5. And that is really the chunk that you are eligible for. 75% of that needs to be spent on payroll, and you'll need to keep very diligent. I would put it in a separate account and pay that out of that separate account, so there's no questions of where did that money go? There's some missing here. Oh, it went over here. No, put it in a different account. and then the other 25% can be used for any extra rent or utilities. So we want to be very clear, if you're looking to have this loan forgiven, you want to be very certain that you abide by those particular rules. Now there's another set of rules, and it's a timeline. The timeline is you must have your full staff back in place by June 30th. So whatever your staff looked like on February 15th, prior to February 15th, it needs to look like that on June 30th. So however you ramp up is going to be kind of dependent on that June 30th date. Now, the caveat is, when do you get the money? When you get the money and are dispersed the money, that's when the time that the clock starts ticking. You have 8 weeks from there to use that payroll and bring it up to full staff. And then keep it up to full staff through those 6 months. Problem here is we don't know when this is going to break. We don't know when people are going to be able to open. So, you know, again, things change on a dime. Anything could change, but right now those are the definitive timelines. The other piece, they continue to add, so nonprofits and all small businesses are included. If you have a question on that because you have 501 employees, go on the SBA website, and it is industry driven, and they will tell you how you are allocated. So those are really the pieces that you want to make sure you understand this. Now, say you get money and you use the funds for something else. 2 years, 1%. It's, you know, you kind of got to make sure you understand what you're going to be responsible for if you don't use it for these particular items.
This call is scheduled to end in about 4.5 minutes. So if anybody has additional questions, this is the time to ask. We're just going to go through a couple of these final slides. Shelley or Gary, anything to add about this information?
So the $25,000 additional streamline loan for those with existing SBA loans. If you have an existing SBA loan, I highly encourage you, because you're already vetted through them. So it's on their website, and it's a separate loan document.
Great. And the bridge loan program is on hold. Everybody will get notified throughout the news and all these resources that we're going to direct you to when that's back up accepting applications. Anything else we need to talk about?
Utility relief. Well, they can't shut off your utilities. You know, so we heard a little bit this morning on the delay of mortgage payments or reduce. You want to be careful, information from a professional. If you call to defer, just know that at the end of your 3 months or 4 months deferment, that you could potentially be responsible for having to pay that chunk all at once. So be sure to look at your options. You know, maybe you just want to defer the interest, pay the principal, know your options before you do that. You know, and it shouldn't impact your credit score.
Okay.
Really, landlords.
Investor has a website where we're updating constantly. The places that you're most interested in getting your information from are on social media pretty consistently. Tana and other representatives are doing direct outreach to business owners in town. And we already gave a shout out to the Chamber of Commerce to help. Something the town of Manchester is doing also is they just added translation to our website. So if English isn't your first language, or if someone you know who's not on this webinar needs an additional help, there's website translation, and Shelley's contact information is below. You can reach out to her directly. And then the next page, if you want to take a screenshot of it, is going to be different links that might be of help. Again, this is going to shut down automatically in 2 minutes, but this is the town, the top is the Town of Manchester's resource page. You can just Google Town of Manchester and find the COVID page. Connecticut Small Business Development Center, I believe, has the direct link to the SBA information. SBA specifically for the EIL, the Economic Injury Loan, has a tutorial. It's a little old now, but hopefully it's still relevant. And then there's just additional resources. You can check them out and find out which ones you're most comfortable. So again, take a picture of the screen. This will be posted through the workspace and Manchester resources. And if you want to hashtag our social media and search for our conversations, there's Workspace. We'll be sharing all this, the Town of Manchester's Economic Development, and of course, Connecticut Small Business Development Center. Anything else in the minute that's left? Any final questions?
Stay tuned. Are we going to be doing more of these, Stacy?
I think as the information changes, if there's a demand, we certainly,
There's a question just came in. Where do you apply for EIDL? That's through the SBA website, right?
Correct. Or email me and I'll give you a direct link.
Excellent. My chat window ended. All right. So Kyle is going to help us upload this. We will share the links. You can email info@workspacemanchester with any follow-up questions. Appreciate you being here. Hope this was helpful. If it is, when you do see it shared on social media, feel free to comment if you think it's worth people's time to listen to it. Thank you, Shelley, for your expertise. Gary, Kyle, and Tana. Emma is in the background from the chamber, and Michelle and Shannon from the Workspace staff. And Tim, thanks for your questions.
Thank you, Stacy.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks.